Here.
Here. Here. Juliana. Aloha. Nicole. Here. Joe.
Here.
On. Hunter.
Here.
Sophia.
Here.
Sam.
Here.
B. Here. Lorenzo.
Here.
Gary.
Here.
Jude.
This on? All right, perfect. Um, should I do approval of last week's minutes first? All right, is there a motion on the floor to approve last week's minutes? Joe?
Motion to approve last week's minutes.
Is there a second? Hunter?
Second.
All those in favor? Motion passes. Yep, that's everyone. No guest speaker, and here you go. You can announce it.
Hi, everyone. As president of ASG, it is my job to run this body. And I think that since Ruth and I have come into office, we've done a lot to try to maintain and shift the trust of ASG from the student body. And I think we, up until this point, have done a good job in having the students trust us, which is why we were able to have a closed session last week to discuss people's personal experiences. It has been brought to my attention that some people in this room did not maintain their responsibility of holding their seat in this room and did not honor their confidentiality agreement and did not honor the fact that people's personal experiences are not theirs to talk about. I am very disappointed with the individuals in this room. JRB complaints have been filed, and Rules is in the process of reviewing those. And if they find it unconstitutional, those people will be going through a JRB process, which means they will be removed from their seat until an impeachment by Senate. This room is about to get a lot more empty in the coming weeks. And I just want to say that I'm disappointed in those individuals. If you talked about it, you know who you are. And this is why students don't trust ASG. It's because when put in positions where they put their trust in us, it gets violated. So I just wanted to let that be known. So if there are some seats empty in the next coming weeks, you guys know why that is. So as we move forward in talking about both amendments tonight and the Silk Constitution in the next coming weeks, please understand that people's personal experiences are not yours to have opinions on. If they wanted to reach out for assistance in certain departments, if they wanted your personal commentary, they asked you for it. We were there to listen. We were not there to comment on whether or not it was credible, on whether or not you personally. We were not there to invalidate people's experiences. We were not there to share them with other people as well. So I'm very disappointed in those individuals, and please keep in mind who you represent in your seats as we move forward with our discussions this evening.
Yeah. Any constituent comments before we begin? No? All right, Adriana.
On that note, we only have one finance request. It is for food for a movie night from the Association of Caribbean Students in the amount of $150 out of the Silk Fund, and no new business otherwise.
All right, is there a motion on the floor to approve this week's budget? Yasmin? Is there a second? V? All those in favor? All right, motion passes. Jalen, do you have anything you want to report? No? All right. Kyrie. Wait for the microphone.
Okay, so I just posted the candidate intros and the new election HQ is up. I'm thinking about adding a section for the live stream on the election HQ for when we do the debate so that it's easily accessible there. And then other than that, I'm working on a Meadville Library sweatshirt giveaway post for community relations and then rethinking the live stream yet again because I don't know, YouTube Live. I don't think people are gonna like really like interact with it as much as Instagram Live, but I also kind of wanted feedback before I switched the platform for like a third time. So, any strong opinions in this room? Yes. Shira first. Okay. Were you gonna say the same thing? That's true. I'll think about it. I'll think about that.
I may be completely wrong, but I feel like YouTube would just be more accessible, I guess.
Mhm.
Everybody has YouTube.
Yeah.
Not everybody has Instagram, not everybody has TikTok,
Yeah.
not everybody has Facebook.
Yeah. I just worry about like I think more so like accessibility of course, but also like are they looking at it? Are they even watching it for a second? And I feel like it'd be less likely on YouTube Live than on Instagram, but I don't know. I'll think about it. Yeah.
I also think YouTube has good archiving.
Okay.
You know, to actually like record our things so we can look at later and see how we function. But
Okay.
accessibility, okay.
I think I'll just keep YouTube for this term. If like someone else wants to change it in the future, that's fine. But yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank y'all.
Yeah, pass it on to Ken.
I put in the condom distribution chart and the menstrual product distribution chart, and then we have some updates to dining. I think I'm going to let Amani talk about them.
So for the most part, we have our meetings on Wednesdays, and moving forward, we're looking to have more options, rotating options for the swipes and kins. We're not sure what that looks like exactly, but that's something to be on the lookout for. We've been advocating for more alternatives for fruits and vegetable options as well in the market. And when it comes to like the amount of swipes that people are using in Kins, it has gone up a lot, and it hasn't affected the swipes that are used in Brooks. So more people are using their meal plan. So yeah.
Oh, is that it? Yeah. Okay. Haley. can you pass it? Thank you.
So I don't have any new business, but the bag drive was a success. Thank you to everyone who helped. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. The service hour sheet is still on here, so please continue putting those in as you get them. So I've started working on formal for this semester. I'm waiting on Davenport Winery and the Country Club location to call back and give me some more information. Obviously, we tried Voodoo last semester and tried to do something a little bit more original, and it didn't go as well as I'd hoped. So we're kind of sticking with stuff that usually we know cooperates with Gainey. The only other thing for me was I was kind of hoping to get a gauge on whether you guys wanted a theme for this time or not. Um, I don't know if anybody wants to motion for a discussion or if we just want to do a show of hands if that would be interesting, but that's something I'm going to be discussing with my committee this week. So
I think, yeah, just raise your placards if you'd be interested in this game. I'd say we discuss them.
okay, yeah, we'll discuss it. We'll bring back some options and that sort of thing. So cool. That's it for me.
Okay, I'll just walk it down the door. Instead of having to do the whole telephone pass. Yeah, that's why I'm not handing it to you.
Hi guys. Hope all was going well. Two notes. So sweatshirts from the public library will hopefully begin by next week. So that's the best hope at this. Basically we ordered like 90 of them, so they are taking a little while to ship. And then reaching out to Cup and Spoon to do a boba night some point before spring break or maybe right after spring break ends. So that's all.
I don't have a ton of stuff, just working on election process with Abby. She has more information to come on that, but we also met with Rules Committee on Sunday, and there should be updates coming from that soon.
My only thing is that voting opens tomorrow. Encourage you all to, get to know the candidates and just make your decision based on that, and check out the election headquarters on the website. So yeah.
No report from me.
No new business. It doesn't say anything on here because it's saying I need a request to edit access. Is there a reason for that? No, it's okay. Well, we junior appreciation week had, or like the committee had a meeting with Jonathan May today about just like proceeding with like planning and stuff. Pretty cool stuff. Looking forward to it. We're gonna have like really cool panels and all that jazz. But besides that, we're still just like working on like getting that into order so that we can start discussing like project after that. So kind of like we're thinking that like towards the end of the semester we'll be doing like programs and like events that will be like in relation to like starting your senior year. And then also I don't know like when to talk about this, but I'm just noticing that there's like a lot of like I've noticed like a lot of campaign flyers like being kind of destroyed around like the campus center. Like for example, there's this one where a face was taken out. And so I think that like I don't know if like there's like any sort of like I don't know like if there's like a forum to talk about these things or like if there should be anything said about that, but I don't know if that is like a concern to anyone. But
That would be brought up to
uh-huh.
that would be processed through rules within ASG and through.
Okay, cool, awesome, thank you. That's all.
No new business.
Hello. We're planning future installments of the therapy dog visits. We're just waiting on a couple confirmations for those. We have a meeting Friday with GAP to discuss Springfest. I think several other members of this room were invited, so I look forward to seeing you all there. Those of you who are invited and working together on that. And we're also working on developing new events. That's it.
No new business.
Just a follow up from last week, the Ukraine support event will be this Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. So please go and show your support. Yes, Nicole? Yeah. Thank you. I saw one on LinkedIn earlier. On. Okay. Okay. Before we move on to unfinished business, Abby and or Ankita, you have to add the amendment from last week as well. So we can move on to the lift up constitution.
Yeah. We don't need them to repeat their thing, right?
Yeah, that'd be nice too.
Yeah. All right. Do one of you guys want to come up and just do a quick like rundown again, just to remind us? Oh, yeah. No, this would be important for you to have.
I'm trying to start a called Lift Up that focuses on creating a weightlifting club that specifically focuses on like being inclusive and making space for people who have felt prehistorically pushed out of strength-based sports spaces to pursue that.
Thank you. Could you guys step out so we can do the voting? Thank you. Yeah.
Anybody here with Lift Up?
Yeah. So I don't repeat what happened last time. Is there a motion on the floor to vote on the draft on the Constitution for Lift Up? Yasmin? All right. Is there a second? Nicole? All those in favor? All right. Motion passes. That is with everyone. Yeah, let them in. Look at that. V? You didn't vote. Sorry. Step outside one more time. I'm sorry about that. I didn't see. All right. We're gonna go through the
Hold on. You
process.
don't have to go through the whole process again.
Yeah.
How do you cast your vote?
Abstain.
Okay.
Okay. One abstention. Sorry about that. All right. Now, Nicole, if you want to let them in, and then we can all knock and make it seem less awkward than it is. Yeah. All right. Past second round of voting, your club is now existing.
Yes.
And yeah. Hey. Woo! We're allowed to clap.
That was weird.
They don't need to do anything else, correct? Nope. All right. You're free to stay, whatever you want to do. New business.
Okay. So I'm presenting an alternate amendment to the Constitution that we talked about last time. It'll be the same Article 11, I believe, but it has more shared responsibility between the Idea Center and ASG. So essentially, in order for a club to have a silk status or have their silk status revoked, it has to be approved by both ASG through Senate and the Idea Center. And in the event of a tiebreaker where one votes yes, one votes no, then the deciding factor will be comprised of a randomly selected silk representatives from each class.
Veronica, do you want to say something?
Yeah. One point of information, somebody needs to retitle the amendment 2206. And then two, because we have two conflicting amendments, I recommend that we open the floor to discuss both of them in all of their qualities, and then proceed with a vote. I will say that because ASG Amendment 2205 has already had one round of voting, if it gets voted on tonight and passes, it would be in the Constitution. If it fails, it's done. And then we would just have to do we would still have to do 2 weeks of voting for 2206. So that's all I have to say.
Lorenzo? For how long? 15 minutes. All right. Is there a second? Shira? All those in favor? Just making sure everyone voted. All right. That is everyone this time. Perfect. So, yeah, Lorenzo, you start. Shira? Oh, yeah, sure.
So this kind of is the middle ground, because after the GA last week, some members of Silk organizations that were not able to attend the meeting kind of voiced their concerns about the amendment to me. And I believe, as a governing body, our job is to represent our constituents. And they were kind of worried about ASG having too much power over Silk status in general, especially since the Idea Center functions as like advising and overseeing silk clubs in some way. So I believe that this kind of solves both sides of the issue. If the Idea Center revokes a club that of its silk status that ASG doesn't believe it should, there can be measures in place to halt that and kind of
Adriana?
Oh, I think Jalen.
Okay. Jalen?
So after having some conversation with faculty members today, who also advised on disability issues, there has been a big misunderstanding about what this amendment entails. That was proposed last week. So I think the misunderstanding is coming from ASG is now going to violate these Silk organizations, controlling these Silk organizations, and that's not what's happening. So the Idea Center would still help with resources, help with programming, all of those things, the same like it does now. I think it's just a matter of with the experiences that people have had with Lucia Nicole, and within the Idea Center and feeling as though it is now no longer a safe space for people, whether it be people of color, whether it be PFOS, whether it be LGBTQ plus and race. I feel like they do not feel as though they trust her judgment and that she's going to have a say or a retaliatory say, and whether it's going to have a self classification or not. Now, I think my question for you guys is because this is being decided amongst ASG and the Idea Center, I think my personal opinion on it is that, yeah, the ASG, we all have a general understanding, we have access to a lot of the Constitution, the sub-constitution. If you guys have read the sub-constitution, it is a hot fucking mess, excuse my French. And I feel like that's why we're trying to make these revisions. Now, the Idea Center, she has not read the sub-constitution, and she has not talked to me about any kind of revisions being made. So there have been efforts and attempts to try and make this a collaborative thing where we are working together and trying to make this equal for everybody, which is where, you know, my confusion is coming from. Because, well, first off, my confusion is who's choosing the self-representatives, or if there were
So, the way we have it structured is that the chair for the committee is going to be the director of diversity and inclusion. And from my understanding, if you're the chair, it doesn't really matter who's choosing it because they have to be voted on by Senate twice in order to be on the committee, as is with every other committee. So it could be chosen by anybody, essentially, but it could also be chosen by the director of diversity. It doesn't really matter, just as long as they're voted on by Senate and approved.
Okay, so my question to that is the committee change every time you ever try to make sure there's a switch in people every time?
Adrian.
I think that would be too complicated. I think just randomly choosing the committee in general, and then keeping the same committee for any tie-breaking votes would be best.
And do you think that there might be a little bit of conflict if these people were to have personal relationships with either the ASG or Lucia Nicole?
That's why. Okay. That's why we said randomly chosen, and whenever they're randomly chosen, we do want to stress like it's not just board members. I know it says that in the Constitution, but I might need to change that. But it's just any member of any Silk club, just so that there is a representative from that that portion of campus in the deciding factor.
Okay, Jalen. Yeah.
Sorry,
That's okay.
I'm sorry, I need to clarify. So what I'm saying is, let's say there's a tie, right? And they chose, you have a committee they chose, and you voted on, these people are going to be sitting on the committee to make the decision on a subclassification. If we're going to be keeping the same committee, next time there is a tie and we need to vote again, we don't know and can't control what kind of personal relationships they have from the first point of voting to the second point of voting. So I think there might be space in those times when keeping it the same, that they might have a conflict of interest when voting.
Alright, we're gonna go on to Sam and then respond to that.
I think my main question and concern with the difference between these two amendments is one that we voted on last week does not include a way for a Silk organization to lose its Silk status. The way it is written, it implies that once Silk club has its Silk status, it is kept for perpetuity as long as it remains a club. And this new amendment introduces a way for clubs to have their Silk status removed. So my question for us all to consider in this conversation is, do we think clubs should have to deal with the possibility of losing their Silk status? Is that something we want people to be faced with?
Yasmin?
I think like that's the concern that was brought up with Ms. Lucia Nicole, is that she was going to take some sort of retaliatory action to hurt the Silk organizations. And the new amendment that is introduced is to make sure that that doesn't, like, it can't just
Adrian.
Three things to answer Jayla's question. It also like the vote between the committee that can be decided upon between the director, like the chair, like how much each person's vote should count. Like, you know what I mean? It just means that the entire committee has to come to a consensus on one vote. So I think that I don't think there will be that much of a bias because there's still going to have to be discussion within the committee, and then we're still going to have a cabinet member sitting in on the chair and all that. And then with Sam, I agree that like it might be a little scary to see like a stipulation about what would happen if a club were removed, but the previous amendment didn't have anything at all, which meant that it could be interpreted in any way in any new administration, because if it's not explicitly stated, then there is room for interpretation.
Veronica.
I have two questions and then a statement. I'll start with the statement. The motivation behind the amendment of last week was not directed at the current director of the Idea Center. It was meant because in my time so far, I've had to explain the Silk Constitution to 3 people in the Idea Center. There's so much turnover there that the concept of being able to understand the Idea Center role with so many people incoming in collaboration with ASG, there's too much confusion. And there's also too much personal bias that ASG has more checks and balances in order to determine the Silk status rather than it being one person. So that's my statement. And then the 2 questions I have here is, one, does this, so it says, at least earlier when I read it, it said ad hoc committee. An ad hoc committee, is that still in this?
No, we changed it before June.
Okay, so that gets rid of one of my questions. The second question is partially a rhetorical question, I guess. This is insinuating that the process for club approval goes from being 2 weeks to a minimum of 4 weeks, meaning that it would still need the 2 weeks of Senate confirmation, 2 weeks of consecutive body for people of the committee to be approved, and then the committee to review it. That's like 5 weeks. I don't.
Curious question.
I don't have a question. I have a response. I think that that's more like that's the worst case scenario. Like that's if we need to have like a club to be considered reconsidered for their self whatever the designation. But like that's I don't think that we're gonna go in like having passed this and then reevaluate every single self organization. Is that what we're gonna do based on this new rule?
Just also another response to that. So that tiebreaker is only meant as like a protection for whenever a Silk Club status is being revoked. That's why it's only under Section B. For Section A, it only applies for the 2-week rule for ASG, as usual.
So, for clarification, if a club wants to be a Silk organization and they're told no by either ASG or the director of the Idea Center, there's no capability for that second evaluation because they're not getting it revoked. They're getting it initially revoked.
Veronica.
I raised my placard in order to respond to what Kyrie said. You were talking a lot in we's, as in we is in this current government. It should be understood by everyone that this government has turnover, right? So we also have to make sure that the amendment language is clear so that whoever comes next will interpret it the same way that we are voting on now. So when it comes to whether or not we will be reviewing every single Silk Constitution, we might, but whoever comes next, we might not, but whoever comes next will have the authority to if we vote on 2206.
I think we can change the language now.
So I think that this is a good moment to change the language so it is as clear as possible. Because one of the reasons that we thought this amendment would also be a good idea is because of the turnover rate. Because we're here now and we all know each other, and we know to the best that we can govern to the best of our ability. But in the future, we don't know who's going to be elected. We don't know who's going to be the Ideas Center director. Like Lisa Nicole is not forever. So that's why we thought this was going to be a good idea because it shares power instead of just giving power to one body.
Sam? I have an additional concern with the language. When it states that organizations that wish to become a silk club or wish to maintain their silk club status must have been approved by both the Senate and the ESG, the Ideas Center of Allegheny College. My question is, how often are they wishing to maintain their silk club status? It's unclear whether that's a yearly, a semesterly, or some other unit of time process.
Hey, John.
So our thought, and we can add this in so it's clear, is that the only time a club status should be like up for debate is whenever the Rules Committee and the Attorney General have flagged them as not upholding their, I guess, like their partnership with ASG. So that means like they don't have a constitution and they didn't respond to any emails about the Constitution or anything like that. And so then that puts them in jeopardy of losing their silk status. Then a meeting would be had, and then that's when this article would be put into place.
Sam?
Don't we already have the process of removing them from being a club if they're not in compliance with ASG regulations, which by default, they're not a club, they can't be a silk club. So I'm just curious as to if this is complicating the process or meeting a need that isn't already filled and I'm misunderstanding our current process.
I'm gonna hit the rest of the questions. Can you respond to them in kind of one?
Yeah.
Okay. Lorenzo or Gary, which one of you raised your placards first?
Will's had it up for a while.
Okay, Will.
I guess this is probably a question for Abby. Understanding the Constitution, there seems to be like a general concern around silk status. Is it within the possibility of our Constitution to enact that the current silk clubs cannot be removed as a silk organization unless they stop being a club? Like, is it within our power just to ensure that the current organizations, if this amendment passes, then grandfathered into this organization, meaning that a potential new ASG cannot review every single silk organization, or that, for example, there is a situation where a silk club, the silk club status is called into question by either ASG and or the Idea Center. So that means, like, in essence, just the current ones are grandfathered in. Is that within ASG's authority to do it? And then if so, I think that would be very useful to add to this amendment because it might help ease a lot of concerns between the two different amendments.
All right, Gary, Lorenzo, or V, which one of you was first?
Yeah.
All right, Gary.
Brief minor statements I would like to consider. It's mainly with the new 2206 amendment. It's just kind of going off what Sam said. It does feel very overcomplicated, and I see where maybe in the first one it may not have as many words as the second one, but I feel like in next administrations it'll be easier for them to misinterpret what you mean with so many words than the bluntness of what is in the First Amendment. So I feel like that should also be considered just the way that it feels like it's overcomplicated and it feels like it's going to be a long process to what Veronica's saying that it would jump from 2 weeks to like 4 because then it's like a whole lot of people involved. And then I'm just trying to forget what I was going to say.
Abby. That's fine. All right, is there a motion on the floor to extend discussion, Lorenzo?
Motion to extend the discussion for 8 minutes.
All right, is there a second? V? Those in favor?
Did you say 8 minutes?
Yeah. That's everyone. Yeah, motion passes. Lorenzo, you start.
So the question I had, and maybe it's not clear to me, or maybe it's confusing, because I'm not familiar with the process for removing the status as a club in general if they're not in compliance. And my question is just, would Article Amendment 2206
complicate the process of removing the club that's not in compliance whatsoever? Like, will we have to form the board just to remove them if they're also a silk club? Even if it's just removing them because they're not in compliance?
We'll go to V and then we'll let you guys answer.
My main question is, for the committee that involves tie breaking, why is only members of ASG stipulated that they're not eligible and not any sort of affiliation with the ASG?
All right, Shira.
I have responses to both those questions. The first one, or the second one, I guess, V's question, because it would be kind of counterproductive to have ASG vote and then members of ASG be in that committee as well. It seems like a conflict of interest. So that's why. And I also updated the language in 1A that it says now organizations that wish to become a silk club are in jeopardy of having their silk club status revoked must have it, blah, 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 blah. So I hope that makes it a little bit more clear.
Right.
Sam, can you repeat your question from earlier so I can answer it? If you remember.
Sam.
I can't remember which question you're referring to.
Just whichever pending questions you have.
I asked a question about if this specific if this overburdens the process of removing a club that is simply not in compliance with ASG rules that apply to all clubs regardless of silk status, such as having a constitution on file. Additionally, I raised the question about no, never mind.
Hey, Jerome.
Okay, so the reason that we have to have this specific article laid out is because silk clubs have special access to the silk fund and they have their own silk constitution. So we kind of have to incorporate them differently than different clubs because ASG clubs only have access to the 4 main sources of funding. Silk clubs have access to silk funding, so therefore they have strategic rules in place for them specifically.
Curia.
This amendment was written purely because I think it's not Shira mentioned, not every administration is the same and not all of them are going to be knowledgeable in terms of DEI, in terms of knowing who should be classified as a silk board. So I think that should be taken into account when reading this because that's why the idea is so incorporated because their whole purpose as a Senate is to serve marginalized communities. That is their purpose. Whether or not that's being done is a big difference for it, but that is what they should be doing. So.
Lorenzo.
I will defer my question.
Okay. Ken.
I have a question about the random silk representatives. Is that defined as silk board members or all of silk bodies? And do you think that the silk clubs have the capacity to have a list of all of their members?
So originally we said silk board members, but given the randomness in it and the limited amount of silk board members, I revised it to all silk members. And since there should be like the diversity chair should have a connection with the silk organizations, go to the silk monthly meetings. That's typically where I would assume they would recruit from is the silk monthly meetings because officers and also regular silk members go to those meetings.
Information, only silk board members attend silk meetings.
Well, then going off of your point, you really don't know the direction of ASG, but the direction of the center, and then also from a accommodation standpoint of the overcomplicating stuff for the future, and then Abby also then confirmed to me that it is okay to grandfather people in the Constitution. I just asked him to put it out there. Would any of the sponsors be willing to, in essence, a friendly amendment to just say current silk clubs are grandfathered into the silk system and they cannot be removed as a silk organization unless they are no longer a club, just to make all clarifications. But ensure that this amendment only affects future clubs becoming silk organizations. Is
Okay. What was I going to say? I think we should take out, if we were to go forward with 2206, we should take out the terminology of revoke because as I'm interpreting this constitution, I could see how me reading this for the first time would mean that I could review all of them. And then my second thing is, as for the collaborative effect with the Ideas Center, we can put in the Silk Constitution that is being reviewed by a Silk committee that in order for us to vote on a Silk amendment, or not a Silk amendment, a Silk constitution, we as a body would have to be advised by the Ideas Center for that cultural and inclusive knowledge. I do think we're almost out of time. So we're not gonna get
Adriana?
Okay, so going to Will's point, I think that's a good idea. So a point of information would, before the start of Article 1, so the new number 1, have, if I put that stipulation there that all current existing Silk clubs as of the passing of 2206 should be grandfathered in and not have their Silk club status in jeopardy of being revoked.
Jalen?
Silk clubs that exist now and don't be identified as could be considered a silk club as of right now. So that's what going by the way making sure that they, live in them, even though they don't classify as silk currently. I think that if they're working with you later on, or whatever can happen, if they look into the silk constitution or into the silk constitution of the considered silk club, they would find that there are definitions that don't meet the requirements to do them. And with the idea that they're directed to do something, continuously not having knowledge of the silk constitution and what is required to be a silk, to have a silk constitution. Why should we can value their input and value their advisement, but their opinion is being made on personal preference and not on the stipulations or regulations in the silk constitution that hasn't been read by Huck or Miguel or Mr. Holt. So I feel like that's why we're pushing for AHD who should be reading our silk constitution to have this decision, have this make decision.
Abby? What's that? All right, is there a motion on the floor? Or is it?
Yeah, I shouldn't have said 8 minutes, that was not really enough. So motion to extend the discussion by 12 minutes.
All right, is there a second?
All random numbers.
Yes, sir?
Second.
All those in favor? I'm just making
Do
sure.
we have a count? No.
Yeah, do the count. Any abstentions? Any opposed? Opposed, 2 opposed, 3 opposed. Okay, Lorenzo start off, motion passes.
Okay, maybe that was too long, I don't know. But
Still passed.
I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about all this, and I'm a little bit worried now, because we're now kind of thinking about an amendment that we're still kind of working on at this point. And I know we'd really like to get something done and pass so that we can secure this organization somehow. And I think this is the true middle ground. I think we could reach a further middle ground by continuing to work on this amendment as a group and make this better, while also maybe working on that, the original amendment to make that better as a fallback plan. If maybe this doesn't work out, I guess, or if people are concerned about this, and we can improve the quality of both amendments and have a better, more structured plan for how we can attack this.
Gary?
Okay, so the first question I have is just really what from the first proposed amendment that you feel or the sponsors feel as though it's too broad or maybe misinterpreted in the long run. I also missing that because while I feel as though that can be said for one, maybe it can be said for two, and then the second thing is like we're really leaving out the fact that there's a Silk Constitution, and there's a lot in the Silk Constitution where even with this amendment right now, looking at it, being on the Silk committee, looked at the Silk Constitution, it's going to be contradicting the Silk Constitution, basically invalidating that Constitution. I still have not heard many like valid arguments against 2205 or why they feel as though like it's too broad, but instead I'm hearing like we're working on this like 2206 in the meeting right now of like, oh, we can put new words and things like that, but I haven't heard no minor or any suggestions like that for 2205. And this is supposed to be like the second round of voting.
London.
Yeah, I think that like for some of the sponsors that like are on this, like we came together and discussed the way that like the unknowingness of what the future of ASG is going to look like. And I think that right now we might have the capacity to say what a Castile Club is, but we have no idea what the next, leadership team is going to look like. And so if we have a leadership team that is entirely white, a Senate that's entirely white, how do they even decide what the club is or isn't? And so I think that the cultural competency piece needs to be there, and we cannot assure that within ASG alone. And so, I think that that was the main thing that we saw as a problem with the last one, was just that there wasn't a way of ensuring that leaders in Silk and leaders in the Idea Center, or like people who have lived experience when it comes to organizing these groups that are specifically around marginalized identities, have a say in what makes a Silk Club a Silk Club.
Sam.
I want to echo the sentiments of the other students in my class that I think moving forward potentially with a vote on an amendment that has changed while we were talking about it is perhaps inappropriate and rash, and that we should consider waiting a further week to continue to discuss and refine this and make sure that all members of Senate have had time to sit with this document and make sure that their decision is the most well-informed and thought about decision possible.
All right. What, Veronica? What were you whispering to me? I didn't call on you. What were you whispering to me?
Too late. You said my name. I'm going.
Okay.
Basically, we do have the ability to vote to table both amendments. Unless we want to proceed with one or the other tonight, we would have to just basically be like, if you want to do 2205, raise your placard. If you want to do 2206, raise your placard. But we have the ability to table both votes. And then an additional comment that I wanted to say is that the reason that Article 2205 is so blunt and there's not a lot of fluff in it is because when I was writing this, I did not want to take power away from the Silk Constitution, which does have its majority Silk voices, and they are working so hard to make sure that there is no ambiguity in the Silk Constitution to make sure that that's representative of the Silk organizations, even if this body cannot be.
I just want to ask Gary a question, really. You mentioned that 2206 essentially is clashing with the Silk Constitution in pure less and less. Is that not the case with 2205 at all?
No, well, are you thinking about that?
Yeah.
I guess.
I'm so sorry. The way that I've looked at it, because I don't know if there's anything that looked at both amendments and the Silk Constitution, but even like I wanted to respond to London, so I'm gonna answer your question by answering their question, which was in the Silk Constitution, because in here it says that organizations can maintain yada yada by being passed by the Attorney General to the Rules Committee, but also in the Silk Constitution it classifies what is and what is the requirements for a Silk committee, which one of those is to be populated with more than 80% of a marginalized group. So in the Silk Constitution is still valid while it still needs help. That's why there's a committee doing it. I just don't feel as though we should just start making amendments to just work around the Silk Constitution, because then that just disenfranchises it. There also are Silk members that are working on this on that committee as well.
I think who's still on? Right.
Right. And I like that point, Gary, but my question then is, in Amendment 2205, essentially, because it is so blunt, and the main interpretation that can always be taken out of it is that at the end of the day, ASG decides whether a club is a Silk club or not, regardless, because there's no specific language over here saying that it has to be in accordance with.
Any additional requirements of Silk organizations based on the Silk Constitution?
Right, but at the end of the day, if you have the final say without any other checks and balances of power, we're going to disenfranchise the few, although there may not be many, the few Silk clubs that do not like seeing ASG as this overarching power. That's all I have to say.
Sure.
exactly like I think Sam made this point, but like we we formed this amendment in response to real concerns coming from Silk members and Silk board members. Obviously, we can keep working on it, but I also have to say that the original amendment was proposed pretty abruptly, and we didn't really talk about the amendment. We talked about other things which were very important, obviously, but like we didn't really discuss the amendment, and I feel like we needed to consider some alternatives.
Curious.
That is a time that we can. Yeah, no, wait.
Okay.
Back to you. Okay, so I have a couple questions. The biggest differences between the two amendments is one a little bit more specific and one includes the idea center and the opinion of, you know, their vote on the constitution of a self club or not. So let's say, for example, if the original ASG amendment that was proposed, if that was a little bit more refined and specific, even if it did not include the input of the idea center, would that be a big thing?
I'm sorry, this is a mess. Yeah, you can respond to that, John.
So originally we wanted to have the Idea Center because, as we stated, there's a lot of turnover in ASG, and we wanted to ensure that Silk clubs were still able to have a voice and everything. But I'm not opposed to taking out the Idea Center, given that the current director has tenure, and so it's very likely that it won't be turnover there at all. So,
Point of information, no staff member or administrative member can have tenure. That is only a faculty thing.
okay, well, either way, it seems like she's going to be there a long time, and so I wouldn't be opposed with having the vote down to the Silk Committee and ASG.
So I want to like make clarification on 2205. It was made on the basis that like the current process, as I understand it, is that you like if you're a part of a club and you want your club to be in the Silk like overarching like spectrum, you just go in and you file like a paper essentially to Mrs. Nicole Smith, and she's the one who gives you your title as a Silk club. And so in order to like stop that, that's like the basis of what we did. But also taking into account that like the Silk Constitution is being revised, there's still like that power that we give it in like the third point of the article. And we also like it's just a classification. Like nothing in it is about like the defense or nothing in it is about ASG like being like over all of the Silk organizations. Like those would still be like under like the idea center's guidance, but like the organizational status of the Silk like club would just be through ASG essentially.
London. Okay, that's fine. Gary.
Yeah, I do want to specify that also in 2205, it doesn't, and also the Silk club being introduced does have to go through the rules, and then not even through a supermajority of ASG. So my main concern with the Idea Center being included has nothing to do with Lisa Nicole, but mainly just the talk that I had personally with Heather Moore Roberson about the fact that there has been 8 diversity leaders in the past 8 years. So I mean, I would like to assume that Lisa Nicole would and I've had like good talks with Lisa Nicole that she would be there for a while. But my point is that even if there's conflict from the student body, conflict from the cabinet, from the ASG, that there just hasn't been much stabilization coming from the Idea Center, and that it's hard to trust the Idea Center, even if it's hard to trust ASG right now. I feel like it's better to trust us as a body rather than just like one body, and there's been 8 bodies in 8 years.
Are we capable of, like, I think this is a question for Abby, are we capable of amending 2205 directly after passing it in order to add some sort of Silk representation into it instead of going to 2206 and voting 2 times on it?
I mean, Abby can also answer that question. I can be fact checked by either Ankita or Abby, but I'm pretty sure that because we voted on this language last time, we'd have to vote again on this language.
So I think we would have to go through and like the second week of this amendment, but there is a possibility of amending the amendment.
Abby? That's fine. Okay. Is there a motion on the floor? Gary?
Motion on the floor to vote on 2205.
Is there a second? Nicole? All right, this is probably gonna be an important vote. All those in favor? 7. Hunter, is that a placard? No. Okay. So that's 7 abstentions. Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. All those opposed? Seven to 7.
It has to be a supermajority, so that
Yeah.
fails.
What?
It fails.
Yeah, that motion fails. Is there a motion on the floor? Yeah. Oh, well.
I make a statement.
I guess.
Yeah, you
No,
can. Not a discussion. though.
Yeah, no, not a discuss. It's more just a statement before people go into potentially voting. I think it was emphasized during the point again. I think it was Gary that the other amendment 2206 is like currently actively being changed. And then like not debating the amendment, but like talking about what's inside of it right now in GA. I think it would make sense as a student body to best represent SILP organizations, to best represent all concerns in the student body, that we table that vote just to make sure that we all come to an understanding of what's best for everyone on campus, instead of just pushing something in that we've already established is kind of confusing and contradictory to many of us how we see it.
Okay, this is not a discussion, by the way. It's a motion. Okay, is there a motion?
Yeah,
Let-
motion to vote
Okay,
2205.
well,
2205 failed.
2205 failed.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So you mean motion to table 2206?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second? Sam?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Gary, is that a vote or just a placard up? Okay. All right, 15. Any abstentions? All those opposed? So 15-2, right? Yeah, 0. Okay. That motion passes. It's been tabled.
Yes.
Correct. Okay.
Constituent comments.
Yeah, constituent comments. No
And
constituent.
then advisor comments.
Okay, do you want to leave for a second? My thing just.
Yes. Advisor comments. None. Okay. Adriana, real quick, what did you want to say?
So just so that I get everyone's opinions about the differing stuff between the two amendments and make sure that the verbiage is right, can everyone who had a pressing issue with 2206 just like send me an email or something with why? And then I will try to address each concern when rewriting it and before proposing it next week.
All right.
Is there a motion on the floor?
Yes. You
Can
can.
you email her?
Yeah.
No, it's kind of. I think it's important for everyone in the room.
Okay, if you think it worked for everyone in the room, will.
Could we just, for everyone's sake, to make sure we all like read over it before we get to GA, can we, and before the minutes are posted, is it possible for you to get that to us like the day before GA? Like the new amendment?
So it should be shared with y'all. I'm not going to change the sharing rights, so y'all can go in and look at it at any point in time. Just go to the minutes for this week, and I guess I'll send an email as a response to this minutes meetings email, just letting you know whenever I finish revising it.
I have a question for clarification. So as of right now, the process for becoming a SILP board or losing SILP status is still completely up to the director of the idea.
Yes. Is there a motion on the floor? Sure.
Motion to close.
All right, is there a second? B. All those in favor? Any abstentions? All those opposed? One. All right. Motion passes. GA is closed.